All right, let's get started. Episode number 2, we're going to talk about why clients should hire you before you spend another dollar on leads. See, before you buy more leads like boost posts or spend more money on marketing, you need a clear, compelling answer to one single question. Why should a client hire me over every other agent or option available? Welcome to this week's Client Attraction Clinics by HomeBoss, the free weekly sessions for serious real estate agents who want short, actionable playbooks that they can put to work this week, doing it this week to attract more clients, appointments, listings, and closing. See, here's the hard truth, folks. If you can't clearly explain why someone should hire you, more leads are not going to solve your problem. They'll only make the problem more expensive. And today I'm going to give you homework for next week to be able to answer those questions, right? Because weak positioning is only going to produce weak marketing, weak conversion, weak confidence, and weak results. So let's try this exercise on for right now. If somebody were to say to you, let's say you're at a party or a barbecue or something like that, you're on the elevator, and somebody says to you, "What do you do?" What do you answer? Because that's an opportunity to be able to take and get people to engage in conversation. In next week's session, I'm going to give you our answers to what they are, because today I want to give you a framework for being able to answer that on your own. Because when you have a strong position, you have that message, your goal is to get people to say, "Oh, wow, how do you do that?" Or "How could I do that for me?" Or "That's interesting." Right, so for me, somebody says, "Hey, what do you do?" I just go, "I'm a real estate asset advisor." Your inclination to go, "Wow, I haven't heard of that before," or "I haven't heard of that. What do you do?" Now I have the authority, if you will, or the approval to tell people what it is that I do. If I just go, "Well, I'm a real estate agent," well, what are people thinking? We don't have the best reputation. And the reality is, let's say you're at a barbecue at a party. People are going to scamper away from you, go, "Oh, crap, they're going to start talking to me about buying or selling a home." You can't say that. See, that's weak positioning. So I'm going to give you your homework. For next week, I want you to be able to answer that question for sellers, buyers, and investors. So you're going to need to give that a lot of deep thought and come up with compelling answers. Because in next week's clinics, I'm going to share my USP for each of those to give you an idea what that can sound like. But in the meantime, I need you to solve the problem. And the problem is most agents sound exactly the same, right? Most agents describe themselves something like this: "I'm honest, I'm hardworking, I'm experienced, I'm a local expert, I care, all my clients love me, I've been doing this 15 years. Well, folks, here's the bad news. That's what everybody says. So how are you unique? How are you different? And what did you just say that was compelling for people to go, "Oh, wow, that's interesting. How could I do that?" Or something along that line. You see, when you just answer that stuff, "I'm honest, I've been doing this 20 years or whatever. Cool, I've been doing it 33. So does that mean I win? I'm a better agent?" Not necessarily, right? Because those aren't real USPs. And a USP is unique selling proposition or unique selling positioning. And I didn't come up with that. I got that from a gentleman named Dan Kennedy back in 1994. Because unless your USP is specific, meaningful, and provable, doesn't mean anything. "I'm honest." How do you prove that? "You're hardworking." Define hard work for me. So none of that impacts the client. The other thing that I'll tell you to do, when you think of this concept, you always have to think about what's in it for the consumer. They're not asking you what you do or any of those things because they want to hear your resume or they want to know how impressive you are. They want to know, what are you going to do for them? And how is working with you going to benefit them? Because, guys, if you don't figure this out and you still continue or you ramp up your marketing, marketing is only going to amplify positioning. Because if your message is weak, more traffic is just going to create more waste. It's more work for you to get no results. It's more work and more money. Why would we do that? Why don't we solve this problem first? Because more leads is not going to fix weak positioning. It's only going to expose it. Now, the reason this is in the second clinic that we do is everybody always wants to hear, tell me what to say, tell me your answers. And we'll get to that. But what I can do and what you can do is different. And you've got to figure that out on your own. When I show you what we do or what I do, hopefully that'll amplify it for you and to give you an idea to like stretch farther and be better. But you have to figure it out. See, consumers aren't going to hire you for some nonsensical claims, right? They'll hire you because maybe you make them feel safer or smarter, right? Teaching a client. Maybe you're faster, right? Listen, guys, I've been doing this a long time. And to this day, I call real estate agents and I'll call them back. I go to a voicemail and the voicemail's full. So you don't answer your phone and your voicemail's full. Well, what does that message say? Do you really want to take and generate more leads and have them go to your voicemail and have that happen? So sometimes faster is better. And then you have to be very clear about the benefit that you can deliver. Some of that could be done by specialization, right? So I could be the neighborhood specialist. Okay, what does that mean? You better be able to answer that. And we'll go, why are you the specialist? Because people will ask you that. You better have a good answer. Now, I can give you answers to that right now, but I want you to start to think about it because you have to figure it out in your own area. And most importantly, folks, it has to be relevant to their situation, okay? If it doesn't mean anything to them, then it's not a good USP. Now, a USP answers one question, a real USP. Why should I do business with you over every other agent and option that's available? That's the baseline, folks. That's the basic that you have to answer. Because I want you to think about it in this way. Everybody's got to answer it. There's 1.5 million realtors roughly. Again, 75% of them don't do a transaction, and all that stuff is a different conversation. But you have to be able to answer that question because it's not necessarily about every other agent. What if I want a cash offer on my house? What if I just want to be a FSBO? Well, that's an option. What do you have that's better than that? And you're going to need to think about that for buyers, sellers, and investors. Okay? So you need to have an answer. You also need to have an answer when somebody says to you, so what do you do? It's a real common icebreaker at parties and elevators and things like that. What you want them to do is say, oh, wow, that's interesting. How does that work? Or, wow, could anybody do that? Just anything that's different than saying, I'm a real estate agent. People don't really care that much for us, okay? So you have to have the baseline to be able to answer that and have it be compelling. So you're going to need to sit down over the course of this week and write that out and figure out what is it that you do and why is it that it's relevant to you. So for example, if you told me you were the neighborhood specialist and I said, well, there are 10 houses here, tell me the difference between mine and those. I would think if you were a specialist, you would know that inventory. Maybe you're scheduling one day a week to go out and see the new listings or to get caught up on the inventory, things of that nature. That would indicate that you're actually a specialist. And then you have a deep dive on all the information and all the knowledge about what's going on in that area. Hey, where are people coming from in this neighborhood? Where are they leaving and going to? Why is that important? Because we can market to both of those places. You know, what if you live, I don't know, I'll just pick on Tucson, Arizona, and you have McDonnell Douglas and Boeing and all the defense manufacturers down there. Wouldn't it be great to know where those people are coming from? So many of them come from Virginia. I can, full disclosure, I just happen to know that. But they're coming from Virginia. So if I said, hey, about 10% of the new neighbors in our area are coming from Virginia, and they work for one of the 3 big defense contractors, does that sound more like you're a neighborhood specialist than just going, yeah, I'm a neighborhood specialist? So we have to think that through, and then we've got to be able to take and have a process to be able to explain that to people. Because the number one thing I hear when I talk to agents, I go, what's the number one problem in your business? The answer is lead generation. So I'm going to ask you this. If you had 1,000 leads today, but you couldn't convert them into appointments or clients, what's really broken? Your lead generation or your lead conversion? That's where you have to start. What I can tell you, folks, for most, 99% of the time, it's the lead conversion. When you focus on that question, it forces you to focus on the right diagnosis so that you can answer that and understand those issues, right? So I don't care how many leads you have. If you can't turn them into closings, it's irrelevant. And that starts with your unique selling proposition, which allows you to start to do your scripting and your marketing. So this week's about recognizing the problem, right? You shouldn't be chasing more leads until you have a message that makes you the easy choice. And then next week, I'm going to show you how to build that message and give you examples that you can model. But I want to give you the framework to create your USP, right? For your homework this week, complete this sentence, and you might want to write this down. I'll go slower. Clients hire me because I help, right? That could be a specific type of client, like I help investors, I help sellers, I help buyers, I help first-time home buyers, whatever that would be. Achieve a specific result that's better than the typical agent because, and then you're going to give them the specific difference. And next week, I'll share with you what ours are, or what I teach, but it follows that format. Again, clients hire me because I help a specific type of client achieve a specific result better than the typical, or you could say better than the other agents, because of a specific difference. When you can fill that in, and let me know, you can put it in the chat box. Let me know if you got that, or do I need to repeat it a couple times for you? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to even put it in the chat box for you. How's that? Because this is the critical stuff, folks. That's the framework in which you can utilize to frame your unique selling proposition. All right. So I don't think you can copy out of the chat. So maybe grab your phone and take a picture of it. That might be the best way to do that. But now you need to be able to do that for those three things, really those four things. What do you say when somebody goes, what do you do? What's the compelling reason that a buyer should work with me? What's the compelling reason a seller should work with me? And what's the compelling reason that an investor should work with me? Now, if you say, hey, I'm never going to work with an investor, okay, cool, then you don't have to worry about that one right now. But I would just tell you about 30% of all transactions nationwide right now, as I record this, are actually investors. So I don't know that I would just like with a blanket go, hey, I'm not going to do that anymore. So your assignment for next week, the homework, is to have your unique selling proposition for what do you do? Buyers, sellers, and investors. Then when you use this format, clients hire me because I help a specific type of client achieve specific result better than the typical agent because of this difference. Ask yourself, is it specific? Is it compelling? I help first-time home buyers achieve home ownership. That's pretty generic, isn't it? Would a client care if I use that one and I do it better than any other agent because I'm available 24/7? Is that really compelling? It's specific. But is it compelling? Would a client care? Does it create curiosity? If I said that, is anybody going to say, oh, really? How are we going to do that? Or what would that look like for me? Or how could we accomplish that for me? And the answer is, if I did what I just laid out for you, it wouldn't. And then, does that separate you from the other agent, from the average agent out there? Or is it just, right, if I did that, hey, clients hire me because I work with first-time home buyers, I help them achieve home ownership, and I work 24/7. Does that really separate you from the average agent? Isn't that pretty much what everybody says? And so at the end of the day, that's the framework that I want you to use, that sentence. And then next week, I'm going to cover what we say, why we say it, and get the responses. And then you'll have a better idea of how you can understand if I throw out a unique selling proposition and I get you to say, how do you do that? Don't I have your permission to now tell you how I do it? And so now I'm actually controlling the question that you'll ask as a client so that I can deliver the answer that I want to set me apart from everybody else. And then if that works, if you do it right, that becomes the basis of your marketing, so that when people call you, they go, hey, I see that this is what you do. How would that work for me? What would that look like for me? Make sense? So before we worry about generating more leads, we need to worry about answering these questions up front. See, answering this, folks, is the difference between attracting clients and chasing them. If you're just doing the same crap, a home valuation ad on Facebook, and people just go, oh, let me see what it is, and you're chasing that person, that's a frustrating way to do business. If you can get people to say, hey, I seen how you sell houses, what would that look like for me? Or would that work in my neighborhood, or whatever it is? And so at the end of the day, you've got to take and figure these things out, and then that becomes the basis for your scripting and your marketing. Does that make sense? It's your blueprint. And so before we worry about generating more leads and trying to talk to more people, let's think about how do we convert more conversations into clients. Make sense? So that's your homework for next week. So if you found this helpful, and maybe it helps you see the problem more clearly, the next step for you could be pretty simple. I've got a free guide. It's called the 15-Hour Client Attraction Method. And you can go to 15hourmethod.com and download it. And folks, it's a simple overview. It's not really simple. It's fairly detailed overview of each step of the process about building a client attraction model versus chasing non-motivated people all over the planet. Now, if you read the book and you start to implement this, folks, what I can tell you is it'll help you build a more predictable pipeline with better positioning, better follow-up, and way better use of your time. What's that 15-hour about? If you could take and build your business to generate all the client attraction that you need, and you could do that in 15 hours a week, and all the rest of the time was meant for appointments, whether listing or buyer, wouldn't that be a better kind of business to have? So that's what the 15-hour client attraction method is all about. Let's get clear on what benefits we offer to the client, and then let's focus like a laser for 15 hours a week on getting that message out to more people so I can have them call me, ask me if I can help them do the same thing, and I can deliver the message that I want to deliver. So I hope that helps. You know what your homework is. Do it for next week, because guys, if you don't, you're only cheating yourself. You're not cheating me. I already have this stuff done. You're cheating yourself. Don't forget, hey, make sure that you invite. If there's other agents that you think need help in building their business, make sure you invite them to these sessions. Make sense? So I appreciate you being here. I hope you got something out of it. Again, my goal is to be short, concise, give you some homework, things that you can implement this week. So with that, we'll talk to you later, and we'll see you next week. Have a good day.